Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me this wonderful holiday weekend, which is not finally a weekend without holidays, just to relax and clean your house, do whatever we're going to do. I have my son's fourth birthday party tomorrow, so I am cleaning house. Just ordered $200 worth of pizzas. It's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. He's the first time we're having my son and his friends over from school. They invited the other kids in the class, so it's going to be a blast. You're all invited. Come on over. And it's an honor to have you here today. Joined me by Thor and Jennifer Bueno, artists we've started representing, and we're looking forward to working with more. I'm eager to dive into their world and tell you about them and their community, but they're going to take care of that because you know how these things work, these PowerPoints and presentations. So first and foremost, I'm going to take over your screen. Guys, I have the sharing enabled, so we'll get to that in a second. So let me share and go through a little housekeeping. So first slide, always fun. I want to make a note here that on our website, people keep asking me for the links for the meetings. They're on our website under the virtual presentations button. So you'll see on top this little hamburger there on habatat.com. If you click it and click virtual presentation, each week the links are posted there. If I remember to put them there, I'm trying my best. And if you scroll down, you can get the past videos for these Habatat Nows. They're all up online, and more of them are on YouTube. I think I go back to February on this one of 2022. So check that out. We're super excited about Glass Coast Weekend. Everything's falling into place in February. We're going to be partnering with the Imagine Museum. The Ringling Museum just decided to give us a reception, which is incredible. And then obviously we're partnering with the Ringling College of Art and Design, have the same space they had last year. People are RSVPing left and right. There's no real hotel. People are kind of staying where they usually stay, or like people like some people just live down there, so you're able to come. So mark the dates, 23rd to 26th. If you want to RSVP for the whole weekend and be part of Thursday's events, contact Debbie or myself. We'll get you on. The whole entire program is posted on glasscoastweekend.com. I can always send it to you. We have like 14 artists coming in. Davide Salvadori is doing a demonstration. It's going to be incredible, so please join us.
Got it.
There will be also 4 exhibitions on display as well. This is a kind of a glimpse into all of them for that entire weekend. So make sure you come and check us out. Here's part of the brochure. Lots going on, lots of fun. 4 exhibitions. It's quite incredible. So moving on, we have an auction planned. We're just putting the final touches on that. As of yesterday, we just had 4 collections come into the gallery. Incredible collections, incredible work. So we're going to have a 52-piece auction during this exhibit this weekend. So I think it happens on Friday, so make sure you're there or online. NGG, Not Grandma's Glass, which is a show focused on artwork not in Grandma's art collection yet, is continuing through 2023. Expect to see usually around the first Saturday of every month. We just had Kimberly Thomas present. Make sure to check out a presentation. I'm so honored to be part of these artists' career early on, and they're so talented. I think this might be the last slide before we get into the talk. Maybe one more. The Glass Tour, I think, they're sending out the costs now. So if you're interested in going on the Glass Tour in July, the 7th through the 23rd, it's going to Europe. You're on a cruise ship. You go visit studios, and you visit galleries, and you visit artists. It's incredible. We've been doing these tours since the 90s. You just go. It's all taken care of. It's the greatest thing ever you can do. Buy it for your spouse. Sign up today. Contact me. And then I mentioned earlier, the GAS conference is coming during our international in June. We'll have more about that, but it's going to be an incredible weekend. All the artists will be there, so plan on being there too. All right. That all aside, thank you for joining me today. I want to welcome Thor and Stephanie to this wonderful soiree. They're here. Hi, guys.
Jennifer. It's okay.
Oh, I want Stephanie. What is wrong with you?
Stephanie, but it's Stephanie.
I will fix that before the end of the presentation, I promise.
It's okay.
Get out that slide.
Stephanie.
So I will thank you, Jennifer. I apologize about that. I was a little bit tired this morning.
That's fine.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you for joining me. Say hi to everybody if you wouldn't mind.
I'm sorry. You're going to have to, Aaron, if you could help me with what am I supposed to put for this to share this?
So click go on the Zoom screen, whichever one is Zoom. On the bottom is a green button that says share screen.
I see.
Happy to do it.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. Okay.
Didn't mean to rename you. I apologize for that. I do that every once in a while with people for fun. Keep you on your toes. Which is fun.
Oh, yeah, that's not slideshow. Okay.
You guys got some followers I see on Facebook, so
yeah.
You guys can join us. It's a great photo, you two, by the way.
Stephanie, you are so good at this.
Scroll to the left. Go to the next to the negative sign. Go right on the bottom there. So where it says plus minus, right. Looks like a little slideshow screen. Left,
Okay,
left, left. Nope. Keep going left. Nope. Go
Well,
left. Yep. Up to the right. One more. There you go. All right.
Okay,
I think you zoomed in a little bit.
I think I might have. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It fixed itself. When they go full screen, it dominates it all.
All
So,
right, there we go.
we're in
Yeah.
business.
So what you saw was a picture of us now, and this is a picture of us when right after we first met.
Yes.
It's not a real picture though, right?
It's our neighbor made it for us, and they were kind of our tech support. There were some
There were engineers. We met at Pilchuck in the 90s. It was 1999, actually, right before the big turnover of the century. And we met at Pilchuck, and we were instantly attracted to each other because we had unconventional approaches to glass. We weren't necessarily interested in very traditional techniques or glass as an object, but mostly glass as a material. So that's what really brought us together. And after we met in Pilchuck, we ended up doing a brief year in California at a studio that Thor had set up. And
Jennifer moved from New Orleans, where
from
she
New
was
Orleans,
working.
yes. And we were in California briefly and ended up going to Alfred for graduate school shortly thereafter.
This was in the studio that I made after I got back from New York, and it was in Solana Beach, California.
And so this is early Photoshop. The guys that worked there gave us a present. They're like, we got a picture of you blowing glass together where you're both making a piece, because traditionally, like, one of us was helping the other. And so in this picture, we were both making something.
They call that superimposing, right? It was superimposed back in the day.
Back in the day, it was a thing.
The 90s.
So we're going to give a very, very brief intro of our solo work. This is Thor's work.
This is a shot from one of our performances we did at Urban Glass in the early 90s.
The B team.
We were called the B team.
I was not in it.
And
this
is our catchphrase. We were a nonprofit collaborative group of glass artists who made site-specific installations and performances using hot glass. So this was a performance that was funded from our we got a couple of awards. We got a Tiffany Award, and we spent the $20,000 on this performance. And then we also got a Bessie Award for dance, and we had no idea we were in dancing. So it was a really great adventure. We did tours and educational. It started out as educational, and then it just kind of became this big snowball, and it was so fun.
Yeah, well, before I actually ever talked to you, I watched a B team performance that you were in. And I was working in the kitchen at Pilchuck, and you came through. The B team came through and did a performance.
Yeah, I think that was the one time that we were all at Pilchuck at the same time.
Yeah, maybe. But I think it's important to note that right now it seems like there's a lot of performance in glass that you see, a different.
It's gotten popular.
It's gotten a lot more popular, but the B team was really the first to use glass in this way. You want to explain what you're doing?
This is the Hot Glass Rainstorm, and we first performed this piece at Detroit as a visiting artist and at the Center for Craft and Creativity. And I had made in the afternoon an umbrella made out of steel drums, and this is a really fancy umbrella we had fabricated in Brooklyn, but. It was very choreographed, and we had sound system, and this was a particular performance that we did based on stunts. So we had a lot of wild stunts that we did in this particular performance.
Sounds dangerous. I love it.
Oh yeah, it was super great. This is I continued some of my performance work. This is my crew. We did a performance. I was a grad student at Alfred with Jennifer at the same time, and this is a performance of voodoo healing ceremony that we did for the gas conference in New Orleans. And I blew glass on stilts, and that was my team that was working with me for the transformation ceremony.
Did you know how to walk on stilts? Did you have to teach yourself at that particular time?
Well, it was My performances typically involve they're site or place specific. They involve audience participation, and typically there is some form of physical peril that I survive.
Thor grew up as a surfer in California.
Yeah.
Maybe we should mention that.
Gotcha. And
So,
I would suspect magician was easily in there too.
Yeah. So you would,
So we had like this 8-foot tall glory hole that was kind of homemade, and I collected different. I asked the audience to create or write down ailments that they wanted to be healed from, and I took all these ailments on little pieces of paper, and we made a glass voodoo doll, and then we put all the ailments into the hot glass voodoo doll that was all blown glass into chicken wire armature, so they don't have to be annealed. And then we had a campfire, and we roasted the voodoo doll in the campfire, over the campfire, in order to cleanse the audience of their evil ailments. And it went really well, but after the performance, the fire marshal was very upset with me for lighting a campfire in the Contemporary Art Center.
Mm-hmm.
I would suspect. That's funny.
And this is some of the work that I had in my thesis exhibition
at Alfred.
at Alfred University. This is a kind of a giant paperweight called a lens tablet. And that's a Paradise paint. I have a big painting background, and I got into Paradise paint with David Hopper. And so this was some of the work I made with a Paradise encased blown glass. And then this is a piece that was in my show called Visual Dis-Ease. And it was kind of about, my show was about mental instability. And so this is a mirrored wall installation that's kind of reminiscent of something you might find at a microscope. This is a lens tablet, which is a really thick tablet form that I carved out these lenses, and it's based on people with multiple personality disorders. And when they're presented with a mirror, their different personalities appear in the mirror perceptually and kind of vie for attention. So your mirror has, your reflection has multiple renditions, I guess, so to speak. How do I click it?
Yeah.
This is some work that I made when we were residents at Penland, and I started to really get inspired by nature. So this is kind of that's a bird up on top of this head.
It's called Listening Kingfisher.
Listening Kingfisher. Thank you, Jennifer. And this is a series of birds that I made with the paint and blow technique, kind of inspired by some of those old Vanini forms. And here's Jennifer in our studio.
Right. So I grew up in South Carolina and on a lake. And so I've always been influenced by water. And this was my thesis show that, and I was making sort of work similar to this when I met Thor.
Mm-hmm.
It was very sort of biology oriented. This is a piece where there's an installation of basically like kind of a miniature pond with duckweed, which is the green plant you see on the surface. The glass domes have the air sucked out of them so that the water rises up, and then you can see kind of a cross section of the water. There was a filtration system at the end that was sort of like a homemade filtration system based on some research I'd done about plastics and how they can kind of remove there's certain there were some studies that were happening at the time where they were using and recycling plastics to grow bacteria that would help filter water. So you could see that in the filtration system that's in the upper right section. And there's a closer version of that. And as I continued to make work through and being more influenced by nature, at Penland, I kind of rediscovered painting, which is, I think, one of the connections Thor and I have is that we're both, I think at heart, started art with painting and color and gesture. And it's just sort of a different way of working. I rediscovered that working at Penland, and actually right at the end of the residency is when we started we had a kid and we had another kid later, but the result was I wasn't getting out as much. And I started looking at Google Earth and noticing like just how interesting it was to be able to zoom in on another part of the world from, quiet little place in the mountains. I then became to kind of segue into different images that were produced by satellites that show infrared and different aspects that you can look at, different lenses you can look at through with the satellite imagery. This is a piece called Lake Erie Algae Bloom, and this is an event that happens seasonally, but has gotten worse with climate change. In Lake Erie, seasonally, there's an algae bloom that happens. And so from the satellite, you see it sort of as this. And I ended up portraying that by looking at engraving individual pieces of solid glass and painting them on the back. I put mirrors behind them. And so that the result is when you see it, it sort of has the same effect of old-fashioned stop sign, where the marbles and glass are embedded into the stop sign backed with the silver, so that they kind of have a reflection. And so the effect is that the light, the pieces of glass are lighted up from within. Once the pandemic hit, I started kind of zooming in from the satellite images down to like the body and thinking more about biology. And so the forms have sort of shifted into, these pieces and parts that kind of are oozing out. So they're more interior.
This is a huge watercolor mounted on a piece of plywood. So we're talking 4 feet.
So this is, and I was thinking about the frogs that gather outside of our house at the particular floodlights, and how they've kind of decided and set up generations of frogs that have come to those floodlights. And, the satellite pieces were more about how humans are affecting the planet and shaping and changing the form of the planet. These pieces are more about how our presence are informing and shaping animals. So in this instance, this frog is generations living off of the floodlights that are outside of our house. And it's sort of distorting his life and his being. So, and like Thor said, it's watercolor mounted to plywood. It's about 4 feet big. And there are pieces that are jutting out sort of like chandelier parts. This is from the same series. This piece is called a swimming pool, and this is a water strider, which we have in our rivers nearby. But in this case, this water strider has landed in a swimming pool, and that's why he has that bright blue shadow that is sort of a David Hockney blue in the swimming pools. So we'll go there. This is really where Bueno Glass started.
Yeah, well, that's Mark Pizer built that studio, and he was the first resident artist at Penland, I guess, in the 70s.
Yeah, this is, and this was, so this is Penland School of Craft, where we had our residency, postgraduate school. And like Thor said, Mark Pizer built this studio. One of the reasons it's looking in such rough shape is this is right after Hurricane Ivan hit. We got our residency, we moved everything in, which was just parts and pieces and furniture and whatnot in boxes. And as soon as we got everything unloaded, Hurricane Ivan hit, and we lost power for like 2.5 weeks or something, but we really managed to fall in love with the place in the meantime.
That was our view out of the back. And so we had a 3-year residency, and you have to build your own studio. And so you become like this example for the students to come and visit and see how we function and how we're, hopefully pulling it off.
The residency program at Penland is amazing because there's right now there's generations of Penland people who've settled in the area around. It's a 3-year program, and they give you a place to live and a studio and food. So you've got everything you need. And by the time you leave, it's sort of like a business incubator, where by the time you leave, you're set to kind of be free and out into the world and sustain yourself.
Yeah, it's just such an opportunity to hyper focus on your work and not have any pressures about economics and all that, you know,
But you still
other stuff.
You still have some, because you still have to pay your electricity bills, but you get to meet, you know, people and use their facilities, and so many amazing people come through.
Yeah,
So
that's a great friend, Scott Darlington, and he came, was our visiting artist for our class. And you know, this is my TA, and he came from Alfred. I helped him take his first gather, and he's still blowing glass, you know, 20 years later. So it's just been such a huge influence. This is some of the decorative work that Jennifer and I were developing.
well, I mean, because it was a business incubator, we were kind of trying to come up with a production line at the time so that we could, you know, pay our bills in addition to making like new bodies of work. And we really got into the surfaces of things and started, this is, I guess, one of the first collaborative pieces where, you know, Thor had made the glass and I started coming up with a composition. And this is in the foyer at the Penland Artist Residency. So this was it's sort of a low res image, but it's one of the first ones.
I think that's the very first installation we ever sold.
Yeah, it could be.
It was based on sound.
Yeah, this was like it was called Roar. And yeah, so some of those surfaces that we had on the vases kind of we started using them, just looking just at the surface, which would get us, you know, onto the wall and out of the vase land.
So they're like little paintings.
Yeah, and they became sort of river stones, sort of combining the surfaces that we had with the vases with the silvered glass component series.
But they're not paintings, they're actually colored glass. Sorry.
Yeah, so we treat them like paintings.
So this is kind of an event at Penland, and they have a 4th of July parade where the classes and the community all come together and they have a big fireworks. But this is part of the parade.
Yeah, and this is why we stayed. You know, so a lot of residents stay, you know, after they're done, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, right now I think you can see over like 100 studios when they have the studio tour in this area. So many people, but we really fell in love with it, knowing that we wanted to be in a place where, you know, glass is such a community-driven medium. You know, you really need to stick together to kind of like make things work, and it's really hard to be in a rural place without that community. So there's not a lot of them, but Penland is a great one. And remember at one point we had our kids in a Montessori school, and they were in the 3 to 6 year old class, and there was only 2 kids whose parents weren't a glass blower or a ceramics major or a ceramics person. So it just really
super crafty.
Yeah, like there's Greg Fiddler up in the front in the parade. It's just a really wonderful, supportive community to be in.
It was like a warm hug.
Yeah. So, you know, after we left our residency, we got a place down the road from Penland.
This is the room we're standing in right now.
Yeah. So this is a while ago. Our daughter's now a teenager, but you know, when you have kids and you're an artist, everything kind of gets all mixed up. And this is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is the first install we ever actually sold in a hospital, right?
Well, the hospital, yeah, and this was a big turning point for us. This was the first hospital piece, but this was not. And there's our son. He's 16 now and 6'3". But this was the first with a company called Skyline Art Services, who I was talking with Aaron earlier. They just specialize in hospitals and designing hospitals. So they're not just an art company. They deal with the surfaces of the wall coverings and the signs and how do you find your way. But I have been so grateful to have stumbled into this because these guys they introduced us to this whole other area of art called evidence-based design. And coming from a background, we both were in graduate school and a traditional art background, this is really interesting to me because it's just completely data driven. They have done research where they figure out what is going to help people heal, what's going to raise their cortisol levels, what's going to make them feel calm, what's going to promote healing. And not only that, they think about families, like they think about it from the hospital perspective as a whole, but also the patient as a whole. So because, your patient is going to be better supported if there is a place where families can be comfortable and help support that patient. So we've been working with them for a very long time, and this was the first job we had with them. As soon as they hired us, they sent us some articles about evidence-based design, which ended up kind of influencing some of our work because we started thinking about colors and textures and things that were within that evidence-based design promote healing. It was just kind of like opened up another venue. Not venue, but
it kind of transformed. Well, sorry to interrupt. It kind of transformed our work from being something that would be considered something decorative to actually having a really solid function in terms of the benefit for the viewer and the calming effect and lowering stress levels.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things I was reading in the articles that Skyline had sent us was nature is a really strong, potent in healing, but you don't want to make references to very specific places. Like you don't want a picture of the Grand Canyon, something like that, because you want to trigger memory and you want the patient to be able to kind of go into their mind and experience nature in a way that relates to them. And if you show them something like the Grand Canyon, it's also a reminder of this is where I'm not, because that's a specific place. And so instead, if you show them glimpses of nature, bits, things that will kind of like tip them off and take them somewhere, is actually conducive to healing because it kind of promotes a relaxation and a calm, and you tend to remember your more positive memories. So, a piece like this, it's like, you're getting part of the tree. You're not getting the whole tree. You don't quite know what the story is, but all the colors are very calming and there's a sense of peace.
The abstraction.
The abstraction is key. And blues and greens are very important. You can use reds, but not really in the hospitals. And they want something that is the blues and greens. I mean, statistically, they've done research and it does calm people. It does help promote healing. And the other thing is to be able to let people experience objects in a way that is tactile, but they are not actually touching. So if you can have different surfaces, like stuff that you can look into, stuff that is a very solid surface, stuff that is matte finished, shining, different textures. Visually, it's kind of like you're able to experience them physically, which can then help promote healing as well. So we started combining some of the different textures and colors and tweaking. Do you want to explain how these colors are made?
Well, the last piece was from our Sticks and Stones series.
Sorry.
But Jennifer and I, we're very opposite, and I'm very frenetic and run around and I blow the glass, but she's really more contemplative, and she's been putting together these compositions, and she started to really, there was no boundaries between this series and that series. She just started mixing stuff up, and we're getting these amazing compositions with just all the textures and the colors and all the relationships of the negative space. And, she works, it's so hard to put these together. She works really hard to make it seem effortless, and it's super organic, but it doesn't just fall into place like that.
Well, thank you. Well, you do a great job with all these patterns.
We've kind of hit our stride, and she's been making these compositions, and I've been making the different patterns and the different shapes, and it's really come together in a really amazing way.
Well, it works out because Thor likes to blow the glass. Like there's not a lot of fussing on these pieces, which is one of the things when I first met him that I noticed. There's some glass that you'll see and people will work for hours and hours and hours, and that's just not our nature. We make it quick and let the glass kind of do its thing and move on to we like that section where the glass is going from like liquid hot to cold. And to see that happen over and over again, I think Thor likes the quickness. It's not
I love to push limits.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to my B team thing where we would plan on being spontaneous. And where, you know, after 40 years of blowing glass, I've got a lot of control, but it's still really fun to just get it really crazy hot and see what the glass wants to do. And just
that's
try
the
and
surfer in you.
and just try and make the piece survive sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of times if people are helping Thor or like I'm helping Thor, you're like, this is totally gonna like, he's got it way too hot. It's totally out of control. And right at the last minute, it's like, whoop, he made it. You know, so there's a lot of like that. Whereas, you know, some of the other glass artists, things are much more methodical and there's a process, but this is very different. So with Thor, he's, you know, he likes to crank them out, and I like to sit and stare at things and fuss. and so he hands it off, and I get the glass over here and I do the arranging. But we found that we can, you know, kind of evoke different with the palette so unlimited, you can really do just about anything from you know, abstract things that are mimicking the space around, or something like what we're looking at now, which was from a show we did based on botanicals, and this was a referencing a Jack in the Pulpit. So we're kind of suggesting the Jack in the Pulpit, but we aren't literally. So
You got a question from David. Go ahead, David.
And Dale Goldheim. So let me turn my laptop around.
Oh, there we go.
There's a whole bunch of other people in here.
There's a piece installed behind them. Do you see it, guys?
See it?
We're trying to find your image.
I'm gonna pin him real quick to the top. There you go. You see it
I
now?
don't know.
I don't see everyone.
Oh, there we are.
Oh, there we are. Yes, I see it.
Your head's in the way. Turn a little more. There you go. Beautiful.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
Anyhow, I just wanted you to know that being appreciated and enjoyed, and it's Jack in the Pulpit.
Oh, what a surprise.
I love that.
Thank you. Are you in Asheville?
No, we're in Sarasota.
There's some.
Okay, I remember.
Well, we did buy it for Momentum.
Oh, that's so awesome. I'm so glad you got that piece. I was wondering who bought. I really loved making that. And we have, you know, it's funny, the house we're in now, it was an old donor of Penland. And so it was built in the 80s, but we have 3 Jack in the Pulpits that are right by our door. And they've been coming up ever since we moved in. I think they're probably like 20 years old. Same Jack in the Pulpits.
Oh my God. Toots Zinski, giant kiss to you. I haven't seen you in so many years.
We're loving it.
You want to say hi, Toots? I'll unmute you if you want to say hi.
I still remember, and it always brings back a great feeling of pleasure working with you when you were on the team, when Alfred DeCredico, the painter, and I did that collaboration at RISD, and it was just the most wildly wonderful blowing session. You jumping over the bench and absolutely being willing to try anything and push everything as far as we could. It was fantastic. And congratulations on your amazing work. And I can also say that your hospital work is really beautiful. I had to be in and out of a very complex hospital in Boston in 2012. And, you know, the blur of fear, the blur of post-anesthesia, the blur of, you know, painkiller drugs, trying to find your way would have been impossible, except instead of sort of, you know, trying to remember where to turn and being afraid the whole time of some weird procedure I was going to, I was focused on finding the right piece of art that was the marker of where I had to turn or go down a hallway. And instead of being afraid, I was just sort of enthralled with the art. And I arrived, at the door of the procedure feeling really fine. And to what it's so important to have artwork in hospitals. It distracts people. It helps them find their way when they're kind of blurry and lost. So congratulations. It's wonderful work.
Yes, Tits, I've never met you in person, but I wanted to. And Al was one of my teachers, and he was
Really?
here. Yeah, when I was a freshman.
Yeah,
So it's
Misty.
nice to meet you. Yeah, I agree. I was telling people before this started, I just had colon cancer and had a major surgery at the end of October and was in Mission Hospital. And we had just finished putting a piece up at Mission Hospital, just like a few months before. So I felt like I got a really good dose of how important it was. There was this painting right before when I was before I had the Da Vinci robot surgery, and I was in the waiting room for the longest time, and there was a painting in there, and I'm just so glad it was there because everything else was so depressing.
It does make a huge difference. It sort of, as you were talking, it reminded me of some of the family waiting rooms I've, been in over the years because of, parents and stuff being in the hospital, and how depressing some of them were. Like, how could anyone do this? It's so depressing. I mean, you feel kind of sad enough already, and then you have this depressing little room, and at least they could have stuck a piece of art on the wall. And the ones that did have art on the walls, it made a huge difference.
It does.
Yeah.
This some of the hospitals we've done, this one I'll show you later, but they almost look like spas, like the really new hospitals where they're going in from the ground up. They don't really look like hospitals. I'll show you later on, but
It's exciting to feel like you're draining the stress out of a room through your objects,
Yeah, not only draining the stress, but adding, joy, wonder, distraction,
reflection,
sparking people's imaginations to think about something else besides, their fear or what they're going through. It makes a huge difference.
Yay.
Well, so we also have been using these silver pieces as a way, once we got into these more communal spaces, to sort of represent the motion that's happening within the space. So like this is a condo tower, but it's at an intersection in Atlanta where everything's sort of crossing and everything's in a grid.
It's titled 100 Portals.
100 portals. Yeah. So this is another example of that, where the client really wanted us to emphasize the light coming from the window.
Yeah.
Which we did. So.
This is a piece that we did specifically for an event they were having at the Biltmore House here locally. And I guess there was a big
Momentum.
at Momentum, yeah. And there was a big Chihuly event at the Biltmore House here in Asheville. And Jennifer kind of got the concept going, and this piece is titled Gilded Azure, and it's supposed to kind of represent that opulence and spectacle
Of the Gilded Age.
and it's kind of like a giant brooch that the architecture wears.
It's strange when you float down the river in the French Broad, you can go past the Biltmore House, and Thor and I have done that a few times, and it's so strange because you're just in the middle of all of this, and it just comes out like a movie scene or something unreal. But so that's kind of was our take on it. And then we made another piece. This one it's not quite as big, but it's called Lake Moon, and it's the reflection of the moon on the lake.
So Jennifer grew up on a lake.
So you can see a little bit example of all the different colors and textures.
Let me talk a little bit about the work here. I'm crazy about mirrored glass. So I was doing a lot of that silver, just plain silver, like in the center of the screen. But then the stone series, which is the matte surfaces that have been sandblasted, are kind of like natural stones, but a little more fantastic. And then we have kind of a hybrid, which is our metallic series, which has all the patterning and all the colors of the stone, but I leave some holidays or some windows in that color and then mirror behind it. And then those get really otherworldly and really, super interesting as close as you can get or from far away. So that's kind of our main three biggies. Go ahead.
Oh, this is in a hospital in Saudi Arabia, and they wanted something that they had a logo that is like a tree, but they wanted something that had a little bit more motion to it. And since it was a hospital, they requested this particular color palette.
It gets really tricky to, I mean, if it was just, let's make a beautiful cluster of pieces, that would be super simple, but all the aspects involved in all these different arrangements in terms of like the budget and the measurements and the palettes and it's an infinite amount of decisions involved in each install, from all the layering of all the individual objects, and what
Yeah.
you do is tricky.
But I really enjoy it. I love to envision I wish we could go to see all of the installations, because we don't always get to install, but it's fun to think about how people would move within the space, and then through talking and working with the clients.
Yeah, it's
coming up with
rare.
a solution.
It's rare we ever see the pieces up in their forever homes. This is a new series that we came up with kind of as a reply to COVID. And this is our Reverie series, and it's based on soap bubbles. So, for a while, we do a lot of the connection with nature, but we just needed to start transitioning to something a little bit more celebratory and uplifting and playful and fun.
Yeah. So we started noticing when we mix the silver pieces with the colored glass, how they kind of play and reflect to each other once they're touching. And that's how these pieces ended up developing, is that, some of the green you'll see is actually the blue and the yellow bouncing back and forth in sort of a reverberation of color, and it makes a different color. So you get this sort of playfulness, and they change a lot when you move around them. And this was from our floral series. It was called Bottle Gentian.
Yeah.
So it's based on a flower. This was also from the
This is
flower series,
Mountain Laurel.
Mountain Laurel. Yeah. And then we started, we had a request, which we didn't get, but we did get one commission for a children's hospital. And I was so excited. I really, really want to do a children's hospital. And so we came up with these bright colors in the triangle form, because they're sort of floating and playing and kind of being free. And it seemed like a great image for kids to think about, that there's less restriction and a little bit more movement. I was just sort of imagining that would be something you would want if you were a kid stuck in a hospital.
Just a lot more playful and uplifting.
But we did get, this isn't a children's hospital, but this is a rehab center. And I'm sorry, we don't have a photograph of the whole thing. I had to steal this off of a screen grab from
Someone's Instagram
story from Atrium Health. But this is a rehabilitation center. And most all of the artwork, it was interesting talking to it was Skyline.
Mhm.
Again, they had been hired because the patients are coming in and kind of expecting to have a transformation when they leave, rather than a hospital where you're not quite sure what you're getting into. All of the artwork throughout the rehabilitation center had sort of a color gradient theme, or a theme of transforming, coming in one way and going out the other. So they specifically asked, can we have, rainbow, some sort of color gradient that transitions from one color to the next color to the next color. So everywhere throughout this rehab center, and it's pretty amazing. Their website, they just opened, as it says, on January 14th. So they don't have a lot of images up, but it's like I said earlier, some of these centers and things that Skyline is doing, they really look more like a spa than they do a hospital.
Yeah, it's
which
pleasant,
is
very pleasant.
amazing to see. I wish everything was like, all the hospitals in America were like that.
We had a quick question from the audience of how these works are mounted.
Okay, well, you're about to see.
Yeah. So this
Perfect.
is a little bit of our process here.
Yeah.
This was well, normally they just hang on a drywall screw. Super
If-
simple. We
Well,
like to
if they're
keep
in
it
a
very simple.
residential place where no one's going to touch them.
And other than that, in a public space, it's the drywall screw and some construction adhesive that's compatible with whatever surface they're mounted on.
Yeah.
But this is a big project that we did, what, 2 years ago? Last year.
Yeah, last fall.
And so when we have a really big project, we have to go over to Penland to their big space to mock up for final approval. So this is kind of a process shot where Jennifer has arranged this piece as it would go up on the wall. And we've shot a series of pieces for the client approval.
Yeah,
So
so this is how it works a lot when we commission. The client tells us the needs, the measurements, the layout of the space, and they'll give us, what they're thinking about, and we kind of come up with what we're thinking about, and we'll send them this layout. And in this case, every notch that you see on the right is a balcony, because this is going vertically, and I think it was like 30 feet long. And I can't remember at what point off the ground it started, but
it's way up.
yeah, it's up. So now you can see.
So there's a template going up.
Yeah, and we weren't actually allowed to install this one because the arm that they were using was a very specialized one. There's not many that can get that narrow and that high up, because it all kind of converges. But
You didn't want to go up there?
yeah, I know. So the template gets hung first, and then the next step is that they prep the wall. So they go along the template and cut holes. Every piece is numbered. Every hole is numbered, and then they start to apply the pieces. And we did that in sections. And the right, this building was not finished, obviously. We went to sections that were finished, and it was amazing. It was like being underwater. If you go, the section you go underneath our piece, it goes down to where the emergency room is, and they've got a walled hanging garden of just nothing but plants. And that's the waiting area inside and outside for the emergency room. And it's just like a garden with water and plants. And
Wow.
and then they have these beautiful long, I don't know what kind of lights they are, but there's a lot of glass that's going vertically down that's all blue and green, and you really get the feeling of being underwater.
That's the waiting room?
That's the emergency room, waiting room. It really did look more like a spa than places that I've been and waited for my loved ones. It was very different. And this is, as you can start to see a detail of the on the right, what you're seeing, that funny curtain, is a firewall that drops down. So that's not there during the time, and they've got some nice lighting, but they put it down because they were still working. Just to explain what that is, the piece actually kind of stretched into, we have a little bit of stones that would reach over into the waiting room, just enough to kind of feel like it's being integrated. But they had to do that after I was gone because they were still working on the building.
Yeah, it's not painted yet.
Yeah, it's tricky with some of these projects when you're installing and the construction is halfway, because there was only a certain amount of time when we could use the actual bucket lift, and then we have to wait till the bucket lifts out because certain other things have to happen. And then you can go back and put the final pieces in with a ladder on the side and have it kind of move into the waiting room area. You can kind of see where the construction guys are there. Some of those pieces in the final kind of trickle out into there. Okay.
Okay. This is a piece we did in Boston for a unnamed corporate headquarters. They've asked, requested anonymity. They want to be anonymous, but this was in the entryway, I believe.
Yeah, it's called Eddy of Light. And so it's sort of based on the little eddy that you would see in a river where you get a little bit of the current, which kind of circles around and kind of becomes a vortex. This piece was a funny area. There's a cafeteria behind it. And the wall that you see on the left kind of split the piece in half. So from far away, you would only see the circle if you're coming down one hallway. And if you
Oops.
went around the corner, I can't get back. I don't
Sorry.
know how to do that. But if you went around the corner, you would see the rest of the piece. That piece was made in 2014, and in September, Thor reinstalled the piece because this company likes to rotate they have a large art collection and they like to rotate it every 8 years. So they requested to expand the piece and move it to a different building that they have.
So yeah, they shipped us all the old pieces and then we added maybe a third more. And then
Came up with some drawings.
Jennifer made amazing drawings and they
Architect.
chose one.
Yeah. And it was a similar, they wanted it to match the flow in the building, the flow of people in the building. And so it's sort of hard to tell, but there's a lot of
There we
like,
go.
yeah, it's
Sorry.
kind of funny the way and it was really hard to get a picture of, but the way that people flow in from two different sides on one side and then one side on the other side of the building, and then they kind of converge and there's like a meeting place in the middle. So
Yeah,
it's
and
very
plus it's
interesting.
important
We
how it
spoke
looks
about
from the giant window.
this institution having a team of people that just moves art every 7 years. And
Yeah.
sooner or later, the artists are no
they'll get
longer
down, yeah.
around, but they're still trained. They'll figure it out. It's pretty amazing.
The install team that arrived to greet me and to work on this piece, we popped it out in record time, and they'd installed our work together with us before. And then since we finished early, they got on their airplane and were off to India for another install at another
Wow.
headquarters. So they're just on the move and one thing after another. So it's fast paced.
yeah, it's fascinating. So you can see the kind of the end. Yeah, when I was thinking of these, because the walls were faceted, we try to make each piece so it's practically impossible to see the entire piece in one sitting. Here you can, but it's still kind of funky. So we try to make sure that whatever angle you're looking at, you can get kind of a nice composition of reflecting where you're at in the space.
Very nice.
Like the other piece, this building was not finished, so the surfaces that you see will be different from
Yeah.
down there.
And who knows, maybe in 8 more years, we can take it down and put it up somewhere like in Zimbabwe or something.
I want to go to, I don't know.
In
Let's go to
yeah.
Paris.
Okay.
Let's ask them to do this.
On the way to the south of France, right?
Yeah, let's go to South Africa. So this is, I guess, this is from the floral show. These are based on hydrangeas, and it seems like this is what we've been making more currently, as far as like new forms and new work, just based on the hydrangea and different. You can see some of the reverberation in color between the different pieces and the different surfaces.
You can kind of assume your work is a type of therapy too, guys. And now you can put that in to the advertising, it's pretty,
Yeah.
it's pretty soothing and therapeutic. in a
Rock
way.
therapy.
Right. Reflective therapy. I'll start a website.
They look really nice in that photo, I have to say.
Mhm.
Do you guys have any questions about any of our process or what we're,
You guys are doing a
wait,
good
that's your
job.
line, Aaron, sorry.
No, you guys are doing fine. If people jump up with questions, I've been zooming long enough that people come along when they're ready. So feel free to continue.
I think we're kind of low on images.
Yeah, I
Are we
think
all
that's
done?
pretty much it.
Okay, well, go ahead and stop sharing your screen. And then I'll take over. I promise.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Click
Oh,
on that
stop
button.
share there.
There you go. Perfect. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. I feel more relaxed, to be honest, after going through that presentation with you guys and seeing your work. And it's so amazing to see, because the first time I experienced your work, we brought your work to the Seattle Art Fair and had success at that fair. with a piece we had of yours, and it was a lot of fun to install. Template was super easy. Like you said, it went up with screws. We had some stickers there that mount and hold it in place. We didn't really need them, but
Mhm.
the pieces look beautiful on the white walls, and we had some success. So the artists don't really have work that's available there. As you can kind of guess, they kind of work with the space and experience. So if you see anybody or think of a space that you'd want, or if you're close to obviously a hospital nearby, or an institution, this is what they do. And they're here to help and make people feel good. It's great to hear the narratives that both Toots and Jennifer shared with their personal experiences in hospitals of how the work not only made them feel good, it helped them find a path to where they were going during the stressful points of their life. Again, it's an honor to have you both. Thank you, guys. It's very nice to meet you both, even though it's only been virtual so far. I'm sure we'll bump into each other. And like I said, if anybody has any interest or any questions, contact me anytime. But it's great having you all here today, and I will see you all hopefully next week, and maybe down in Florida. Have a good weekend,
Thank you
everybody.
so much for having us.
If
And
you're-
it's so nice to meet everybody or see everybody.
Nice to meet you
If you're in,
too.
if you're in the Penland neighborhood, we're right on Penland Road, so we're really close to the school, and come by and visit us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David and Dale invited you to their house in Sarasota to come see the piece when you're there next.
Oh,
That'd be
yeah.
awesome.
Well, if you give us a call, we'll give you your phone number. You can come up and visit us. It's a great day trip.
Yeah.
Got an awesome
I wanted
coffee
to say
shop.
one other thing, Jennifer and Thor, about installation, because we were in total panic how we were going to install this. We had no clue. And we just kept saying, we're not going to be able to do it. And people are fascinated with it. When people come to our house and they ask who installed that, and I say, David.
Our art handler in residence.
I cannot believe, but it is really easy to install.
Oh,
And
yay.
I think that, if that holds anybody back, it shouldn't, because you don't really have to be professional to install it.
Obviously, and David's available.
I could immediately tell that you did a great job.
The template just does everything for you. People are fascinated. It's such, they're fascinated with what? One little screw? And you can
Well, that's so cool.
So
And
we
so
And I have to say, the other thing is I saw your work many years ago at SOFA. And it never went out of my mind. It never went out of mind. So when when it popped up, I was really thrilled about that. And Aaron knows that I have a very good memory, and I frequently go back to what I saw years ago, because I have said to Aaron, well, you remember that piece that you showed 3 years ago? Is it still around? Can you get it for me? So it is well worth remembering, and we're just enjoying it so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
awesome.
Well, thank you guys again. Have a good
Thanks so much for
weekend.
coming in. Toots, big kiss. Mwah.
I'm back at you.
Can't wait to see you sometime down the horizon.
Yeah, me too. Colleen Garfinkel, if you're still on, it's great to see you again. Great to see everyone. Steve, I'm going to try and take you up on your invitation.
Oh, please do.
I can't believe how long it's been since I've been to Europe with all this COVID stuff. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna